and welcome to Stepping Stones to Awareness with Michael Shrimpton once again. To deal or not to deal? That is the question. Part 2. In part 1 we had some questions. Now we're going to spice it up a little bit with Caroline Stevens.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm going to be interviewing Michael Shrimpton. I'm Caroline Stevens. I'm the Deputy Chairman of Democracy 17-4, which is a campaign group. Our mission is to bring all the Brexiteers and even non-Brexiteers together to fight the establishment. So we're throwing away political party labels. We're throwing away anything that attaches to a person, that identifies them for a particular mindset. We want to unite the people because we've got a humanitarian crisis here. And that starts with Brexit, because we want the UK to return to its nation state, to have a return of sovereignty. So I've got Michael Shrimpton. We're going to talk about Brexit. We talked about Brexit in part 1. I asked some questions and Michael answered them, and I just nodded my head sagely, and now we're going for the kill. So Michael is a friend of Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yeah.
And you're a Tory party member, aren't you? Are you?
Well, according to Theresa May, I'm not. I mean, we're in Devizes. The local association are Remainers, and they won't give me a membership card. So, according to Theresa May, I'm not. But she's never expelled me from the party, and the party refused to go through the processes of expelling me. So that's an issue. I call myself a Tory, but I don't at the moment have a membership card.
Okay, so we've laid our sort of
Theresa May was Home Secretary when I was done with those bogus convictions in 2014.
Home
almost
Secretary.
Certainly, Theresa May was well aware that I was innocent, because she almost certainly had a briefing from MI5.
Okay, so Theresa May as a Home Secretary, I mean, the writing was on the wall when she was Home Secretary.
Yes.
Because Theresa May and David Cameron opted us back into the European arrest warrant at that time.
Yeah, it was a disastrous mistake.
When we did not need to. I mean, I remember a contingent of people stood outside Parliament protesting, but to no avail. The government pushed ahead. We opted out, but most of the things that we opted out of were inconsequential items.
Yes.
But the few things we opted back into were the actual important items. So,
yes,
we had the parliamentary support then. So Theresa May was supportive of conflict against our common law principles, where we are innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
The European arrest warrant, we've done a few interviews on the European arrest warrant. You could be, like for myself, I've just been to Italy. My husband could have gone through a red light and, in a hire car, and we could have got home, and then knocking on the door could be a chap with a warrant for his arrest, and for him to be removed from these shores and returned to Italy. And, for everybody at home, many of you will have gone to the continent over the summer, and this could have been, reality for you. And your partner or you could be ending up languishing in a foreign jail. I mean, it's not scaremongering.
No,
this is what actually happens.
Exactly. There was a case in Greece where someone who's clearly innocent was prosecuted. The problem is that the European systems are civil law systems. Effectively, although the Europeans pretend that they have the presumption of innocence, effectively in Europe there's a presumption of guilt. So European legal systems do not proceed on the basis of our common law, but they're not common law countries, and they're corrupt. So
exactly.
There's no such thing as an independent judiciary in any European state. In practice, the judge bears the imprint of the footprint of the last person with the boot that stomped on his face.
So it's a case of, I'm coming along to you, it would be presented to the local court, and you would just check that document, and we're going to take...
Well, exactly. It's a disastrous idea, but fortunately we're leaving, because we're leaving the EU.
But we're not leaving the European arrest warrant. Theresa May has complied. She has reiterated earlier on this year, I think she was in Germany at the time, and she said, because I remember the MP Lewis chap from the South East. Is it Brandon Lewis?
Oh, Brandon Lewis is the party chairman, yes.
Yes. He was saying, he was saying, well, it's all on a case-by-case basis. Really?
Well, I mean,
You're going to be arrested and taken to the... Exactly. It means nothing. It's totally meaningless.
That means meaningless. I mean, that's typical Brandon Lewis. A man's an idiot, no offence intended.
So basically, we've got a situation where all the government, including Jacob Rees-Mogg, is happy for...
Jacob's not happy about the European arrest
But why
warrant
is he not talking about it?
Well, I'm not sure he isn't. I mean, the problem... This is the problem.
This is fundamental, our liberty.
But people outside the Tory party have got to stop blaming Tory Eurosceptics like me or Jacob Rees-Mogg or Bill Cash or whoever.
They need to rock the boat.
Well, yes, but you've got to stop linking us with decisions taken by the Tory government. I didn't vote for Theresa May. I was totally opposed to her being leader. I was supporting Andrea Leadsom, but I didn't get a vote, although I was a member of the party. I didn't get a vote. No member of the party got a vote because she caved in. She was a disastrous choice of candidate. She turned out to be a candidate of straw. And as soon as one or two Tory left-wing, pro-European, pro-German MPs threatened to defect to the Lib Dems, she was persuaded to pull her candidacy.
But I don't see...
So we're not to blame. The Tory party membership as a whole does not support the European arrest warrant. Theresa May is not popular in the Tory party. And
so it's
the Tory party
being a member of a
she's not elected.
But it's pointless being a member of a political party if these individual MPs can't do anything about it.
Well,
I mean, we have got a constitutional crisis. Let's be honest. Let the people know at home that it's not, this mayhem has been purposely created so that we stay in the European Union. There's not a shadow of a doubt. I mean, if we do have a general election before the end of next year, it'll be a case of we'll probably get a hung parliament or we get Labour in, because it's only Labour that's actively campaigning. So it's going to be a case of that parliament will say, oh, well, we're not tied to the decisions of this parliament, so we can just forget about it, whitewash it, and it's business as usual. But there again, I would argue that we aren't getting Brexit. We're not even getting Brino. We're getting further integration, because Brino would seem to be like some sort of status quo situation.
We're not getting further integration. We're leaving the European Union on the 29th of March. 11 p.m, 29th of March, kick off the fireworks, have the parties, hit the booze. We're out of the EU. So that's not further integration.
Why is it that we are attending all the military unification meetings, which we know is called PESCO?
They won't matter. Once we leave the EU, they won't matter.
But the civil servants are busy writing an exit report, an exit treaty, which means throwing all our boots into EU military unification. And I mean, all the mainstream parties, including UKIP, won't talk about unification. They'll talk about an EU army, which is quite a different thing. It's like a bolt-on. But unification means that all our military will eventually all be wearing the same uniform, and we will be dictated to by Brussels, which is what happens with the European arrest warrant.
Or EU Navy, EU Air Force, but it's not going to happen.
How do you know it's not going to happen?
The EU 27, if the EU doesn't disintegrate, my view is the EU will disintegrate. If the EU does not disintegrate, then yes, there will be further steps towards integration.
How is it going to disintegrate whilst we keep paying that money? It's not going to, because we underpin it. We're the second on the third net contributor to the EU.
I don't think we're going to be paying any money to the EU at all, because I don't think there's going to be a deal.
But we are doing deals.
I'm optimistic, particularly since we've now got Coley out at Southampton.
Okay, right. You've mentioned a very important aspect of all of this, which we seem to see on...
Marinal, who's a nice chap, has got Coley out.
It's all about trade deals, isn't it? Trade deals. So
we don't want a trade deal. Why would we want to? You don't sign trade deals with countries with groups with which you're in a huge trading deficit. Remember, the EU trade figures are cooked.
We know, and they don't balance their books either. I mean, what sort of business gets away with not balancing their books in 20 years, not having them properly signed off? But we talk about trade deals. Now, trade deals is something that it's hitting the headlines all the time, because it seems to bamboozle most people. Now, I used to work for Leave EU, and I also worked for Vote Leave. And this is a brochure for anybody at home who may have received one of these books, or even may have been on a street stall handing these brochures out. This was an invaluable leaflet. It says Stop TTIP. Now, TTIP was a transatlantic trade and investment partnership,
Yeah.
as you know, and thousands, in fact, millions of people protested in Europe on the run-up to signing what eventually became not TTIP, but it became something called CETA, which is actually on page 9 of this brochure. Now, it's really convenient for this Tory government, Labour government. I wouldn't say it's Tory. I mean, let's be honest.
Well, Theresa May's not a Tory.
It's a huge proportion of Labour people as well.
Theresa May, I know Theresa May is leader of the Tory party, but she's not a Tory. She's the woman who got up at Bournemouth in 2002. She was apparently very knocked because I made a funny comment about Ian Duncan Smith's father being a Eurosceptic, having shot down 19 community partners in World War II. Apparently, she was very irritated that her speech, that little quip, got a mention, airtime, and cut into the airtime on the BBC Evening News for her speech. Theresa May is not and never has been a Tory. She's a member of the Tory party.
But
she's
then
a leader, but she's not a proper Tory.
We have to then question
she's
the
a centrist.
other.
She's a machine politician.
But we have. Well, she may be a bot, but we have
She has no principles.
We have to question the principles of all the MPs. And let me read this out because people might not be aware of what this is.
MPs' opinions at the end of the day don't matter because the country is run from the Cabinet Office.
Right. Well,
So
now we're getting to the crux of it, aren't we?
The only opinion in Britain that matters is the Cabinet Secretary's.
Okay.
He then imposes his will on the government. I mean, Theresa May and the Cabinet are house-trained idiots, no offence intended. They're not allowed to form an opinion of their own, and if they do, they're not allowed to implement it. So the opinions of Prime Ministers and Cabinet Ministers scarcely matter. The only opinion which matters in Britain is that of the Cabinet Secretary, who then imposes his will on the government. It's ridiculous.
Okay, so let me sort of...
He sees himself, as I say, a quasi-dictator.
Let me explain about the Canadian trade deal. So TTIP was put to one side.
Well, TTIP's dead in the water as far as
It is.
Yeah.
But what they had coming up the rear guard, if you like, was the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, which was effectively TTIP with Canada as opposed to with the US. Now, anybody who knows anything about these trade deals will know that 42,000 US subsidiaries are actually based in Canada. So it's a bit of a smart move. You know, this is politics, remember.
Well,
now, let's have a look at what is CETA.
We're not going to be about... That's a deal between Canada and the EU.
Yeah,
we're
we signed up to it.
Yeah, we're leaving the EU, so
But
it
we
doesn't
signed
matter.
up to it.
Yeah,
it's in the parliamentary books.
Yes, but we're leaving the EU, so it doesn't matter.
Well, why is it then that we signed up to it after the referendum? So let me just read. What is CETA?
Because the Cabinet Office wanted us to sign up to it. So
Okay, so the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement between the EU, including Britain, and Canada is disturbing and much further along in the process of unification. Well, it has ratification, rather, and it has now been ratified. It was ratified in October 2016. I mentioned this to Jacob Rees-Mogg at the Tory party conference in front of 300 people. Canadians have lived with ISDS for 20 years. It was first included in the North American Free Trade Agreement between Canada, the US, and Mexico, which is NAFTA. And has been used extensively by the corporations. So basically, we're looking at CETA is a backdoor for US corporations, whether TTIP is adopted or not, to sue EU institutions and our national government. So that affects, basically, corporations can bankrupt UK PLC. And also, in this agreement, there is something called Mode 4. Now, I went to a Campbell Bannerman event in November last year. Campbell Bannerman...
he was descended from the last...
He was a Tory, went to UKIP and went back to Tory
again. Yes, he's descended from David...
member of the European Parliament.
He's descended from the Liberal Prime Minister who died...
Campbell Bannerman, he's been working on CETA, which is Canadian... deal, which is the deal that David Davis and Jacob Rees-Mogg have been promoting. Now,
I don't agree with Jacob on that with respect. I don't think the Canadian deal is a good deal. I don't want it. I want a
Absolutely
I want a
not.
simpler, tariff-free, free
So
trade
for
deal
the people
with
who
Canada.
are at home saying, oh, isn't this deal? And I seem to be banging my head against a brick wall. I've been saying to the Brexiteers, yes, a deal is being done. They say, no, we're leaving with no deal. No, I said, the deal is being done. I said, it's going through the parliamentary processes. I said it was signed up to in October 2016 with the 27 other countries. Now, in this deal, and this is, it's called Mode 4. Now, what is Mode 4? Under the General Agreement, the World Trade Organization, WTO, defines 4 modes for cross-border trading services.
Yeah.
Mode 1, trade via the internet, and so on. Mode 4, however, is moving workers across borders, which is, as far as I'm aware, still in that Canadian Super Plus deal. So Mode 4 refers to the shipping of workers from one state into the territory of another for the purpose of providing a service. This effectively, and I'll get very passionate about this because nobody, absolutely nobody is talking about it, and Mogg and Davis and Campbell Bannerman are in support of this. This effectively means the movement of cheap labour from lower wage economies to undercut the wages and conditions of the workers of the host state. This process is known as social dumping. So it's very profitable for transnational corporations to bring in that cheap labour, and very similar in principle to moving production or service work to areas of the world with lower labour costs. Now, in case anybody's sitting at home and thinking, oh, nobody could do my job, nobody from India or Lithuania could do my job, they're sat there thinking, no, it's not going to happen to me. Well, let's have a look at the groups of workers which it's going to affect. There's actually going to be 37 wide-ranging industries which are open to Mode 4. Accounting.
Well, hang on, yes, but Canada is not a low-cost labour economy.
No, but we're talking about the other 27 countries moving their workers into the UK.
Well, no, moving to Canada.
No, because we're part of it. We have signed up to this deal. And people in Poland, people in Lithuania, and it also means that if you're English speaking, people from India can come here under Mode 4 too.
I'm not so sure that's a correct interpretation of the Canadian agreement. That, I think, replies to EU workers moving to Canada and Canadian workers moving to the EU.
It's within the 28 EU countries plus Canada, so it's like a single market. It's extended,
yes,
effectively, the single market.
No, it's a deal between the EU and Canada.
But we've signed up to it.
Yes, but it's a question of what we signed up to. I don't think Mode 4 means that EU workers can move to the UK after March 2019.
Michael, I mentioned it to Campbell Bannerman.
We're pulling out of the EU.
I've mentioned it to Campbell Bannerman. This was November last year. So this is, 16 months after we'd voted to leave. I said, he mentioned Mode 4 in his presentation. And the world's press were there. And so I turned round I actually got the microphone. I was given the microphone because I wanted to ask a question. And I said to people, I turned around to the audience and I said, do you understand what Mode 4 is about? And nobody knew.
Well, I think
I said to Campbell Bannerman, I said, hang on, this is unemployment. This will affect unemployment. And Campbell Bannerman said, yes. It'll only affect a few thousand people. Well, hang on. If it's a person at home, that's job, who could be in accountancy, who could be in veterinary services, who could be in, what else? Engineering.
I don't think Mode 4 at the moment, EU members, nationals of EU member states at the moment have freedom of movement of labour and can move to the UK. And the European Economic Area Order is still in place. The EEA Order 2016 is still part of our law. When we leave the EU, the EEA order will probably be revoked. depends on the terms of the deal. If there's no deal, we're at liberty to revoke the EEA
So why
order.
is Jacob Rees-Mogg in the past few weeks saying that everybody should be voting for this? His Tory friends should be going for something like this.
Well, I think you're respect. I think you're on the Piccadilly. He's on the Bakerloo. He's not suggesting people should vote for freedom of movement of labour.
But that's what Mode
Which
4
is
means.
well,
so people need to be
that's-
writing to
well,
people like Jacob and saying, if Mode 4 is in this, we don't want it.
But you're interpreting Mode 4 as allowing EU member state nationals to move to the UK,
Yes.
as opposed to EU member state nationals moving to Canada. And I don't think Mode 4 applies intra-EU. Remember, it's an EU-Canadian deal. So it governs EU citizens' access rights to the Canadian labour market and vice versa. It doesn't affect, in the way I interpret it, does not affect the internal workings of the European Union. But in any event, it's an EU deal and we are not bound by it. Once we leave the EU, that's it. We are no longer party to it.
So why is it that Jacob's promoting it at the moment? And also, it's not just the Mode 4, which does cause unemployment.
Well, I'm not sure to what extent he is actually promoting it.
Well,
I think what he's saying is that we want something similar to the Canadian deal with the EU. Now, I'm against him on that with respect.
but it's going
I
through
don't think we need
Parliament
a
at
deal.
the moment. I mean, they had a debate in June. And
That's-
Labour, and it was a Labour MP, I must admit, you know, and
That's
this
the
is
Canadian
where
deal.
the Canadian deal was going through Parliament this June, and a Labour MP actually stood up and says, but it will impact on our jobs. So I need the Tory party to issue a statement about this deal, because it is false to say that we're going to be leaving without any deal when this deal is going through Parliament.
But hang on, it will fall automatically when we leave the EU, we automatically cease to be bound by EU agreements.
Right, well,
So the Canadian deal, the Canadian EU deal, no longer applies to the UK once we leave the EU.
well,
It's
the
an
jury's
EU
out
deal.
on that, but I know
Yeah.
how I feel about that, and
Yeah.
I can't
Well,
trust the
Jacob is
politicians
fully-
because
Jacob's-
their lips are moving.
Well, yeah, but Jacob's a very sensible chap, and he's a.
But it's making money, isn't it? It's making money from lower wage economies and helping boost investment. If you derive income from the City of London, which obviously is going to benefit from this, this is why we need MPs in Parliament with no conflict of interest. We do not want MPs who are simply using this role to network and to have an impact on our rules and regulations, because this is what Democracy 17.4 is about, putting normal people into Parliament that are not on any registers or have conflicts of interest. So, point number
Well,
two.
yeah, but
So we've got, right, there was
the
an
problem
article.
is that 17.4 can't. There's no likelihood of 17.4
If enough
getting
people
an
come
MP
together-
elected in 2020.
Because they need leadership. And if we can come together, the people are going to realise that the Tory party, the Labour parties are controlled, as is UKIP, as the Lib Dems and the Green Party. Now, let's have a look at this other trade deal that's been going through Parliament. Now, Liam Fox. There was an article on the internet, and it says, it was in July of this year, so not so long ago. So it says, he thinks he's done it. The relief on Liam Fox's face after his government survived a series of votes on his beloved trade bill, relatively unscathed, was clear. If this really was all over, he would have reasons to be happy. After all, as things stand, the trade bill gives him truly intoxicating amounts of power. If Liam Fox, and this I'm quoting from the internet, if Liam Fox wants to do a deal with Trump, he can just do it. If Liam Fox wants to ruin the NHS by letting US multinationals run chunks of it, he can just do it. If Liam Fox wants to use trade deals to burn health and safety rules in a huge bonfire, he can just do it.
Well, why shouldn't we be burning health and we've got health and safety fascism in this country. It's an absolute nonsense, and it faces huge economic
Well,
cost.
having just injured my foot in the studios, the jury is out on that one as well.
Well,
Okay.
I think we should have a bonfire of health and safety regulations. We've got health and safety fascism.
And it
It's
says, okay, the last one
absolutely
depends a
ridiculous.
bit on what happens with Brexit, but the general reality is that the trade bill doesn't give Parliament any meaningful say on UK trade policy. all the power is in the hands of Liam Fox on behalf of, you know what, the Cabinet. So no wonder he looks happy.
Well,
he's probably already shopping for a big leather chair, an underground lair and a white cat to stroke while he enjoys the feeling of absolute power.
But who wrote this nonsense? I mean, this is the sort of nonsense that's been talked about. Liam Fox is a nice chap. I've known him for years. Liam can't, as an individual, secure a trade deal with the United States. It would have to be approved by Parliament. It would have to be approved by the government. It would have to be approved by Parliament.
But the scrutiny of these bills now is changing, isn't it? This has got to go before the House of Lords in September.
Well, but almost by definition, no bill receives intelligent scrutiny in Parliament because there are no. It certainly can't receive intelligent scrutiny in the House of Commons because there are no intelligent MPs.
But having scrutinised Parliament myself,
they obviously have a limited degree of mental acuity, and
but the civil servants aren't even producing the documents for debate, and the MPs are not knowledgeable enough, as you would say, to debate this. But really, I think now we need to know exactly what the government is planning with these trade deals, because we need to be knowing about this, because we need to get new people into Parliament.
We know what Liam Fox's position is. He favours a free trade deal with the United States. So do I. I think there should have been a free trade deal with America after the end of World War I, never mind World War II. So I'm entirely in favour of a free trade deal with the United States.
We don't want the powers handed to a few people. A few people who actually have been mentioned in newspaper articles in previous years. We want people totally with no business interests into Parliament so we can have a totally...
If they've no business experience, then they probably...
Doesn't mean to say they don't, but if they have vested interests, there's umpteen ways of conflicts of interest.
Yeah, right. You want to replace... You want to see a large-scale replacement with existing MPs. Well, so would
Absolutely.
I, but it isn't going to happen.
That's like red to a bull.
Well, yeah, but the only MPs that are going to be elected in 2020 will be from the existing major parties. I think it highly unlikely that talk about a new party in the centre will come. Well, I don't think there'll be a new party in the centre. 17-4 can't get to be elected. UKIP can't get to be elected. So the MPs in 2020 will be drawn from the SNP, Plaid Cymru, the Northern Irish M parties, the Tory Party, Labour and the Liberal Democrats.
When people start realising that we're handing over our military to Brussels and we're not going to get Brexit.
We're leaving the EU, so we're not handing over our military to Brussels. Nobody in the Tory Party is actually talking about handing over our military to Brussels.
But we're
leaving the European Union.
But you know that I launched the Permanent Structured Cooperation campaign last October in conjunction with Dave Ellis from Strategic Defence Initiatives UK column and a friend of mine, Carol Hellier. And we basically have a network of people throughout the country, and our network of people started writing to the MPs and saying, are you aware that this is happening?
But it's a process that's going to come to a halt on March the 29th because we're no longer going to be a member of the EU. There's no question, there's no prospect whatsoever of Britain's armed services being merged with those of any European Union member state. I mean, that's been talked about. The European Army has been talked about since the 1950s. In fact, the French are not that keen on it because the French are very proud of their military, and the French need their military to suppress internal dissent in France.
Are you on Twitter?
I'm not. No, I'm not on Twitter.
I would suggest that you start looking at Veterans for Britain material. Dave Ellis, he's very prolific on Twitter. He's going to be appearing at a conference
I'm familiar with the arguments, but I think people
It's not just an argument. They're attending every meeting and signing up to all the deals bar one. What about the Sandhurst Treaty?
Deals which will be pretty much meaningless once we leave the EU.
Okay.
How are we going to have Britain's armed forces merged with those of European Union member states when we're outside the European Union? Not going to happen.
Right.
The Royal Navy is not going to merge with the French Navy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the beauty of being the presenter is to be able to say, Michael, I respect your opinions.
Yes.
I differ with your
opinions.
opinions. So I was speaking on behalf of Democracy 17-4.
Yes.
And thank you very much for coming on to the show.
My pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure. It's been a little bit more heated than part one.
Right.
And to everybody...
I don't mind. I do heat it.
Well, you're a barrister. I have no legal expertise
well, I try not
at
to
all.
get. I try not. I don't think. I hope the audience. I don't think. I try not to get heated. But yes, we're not entirely on the same page.
We're not on the same page.
No, right.
And to the ladies and gentlemen at home, I think this is going to be a conversation that is to be continued as time goes by, when people start asking, what is TTIP, what is CETA, what is NAFTA, and what role will our military services play after March 2019. And I hope you join out for Democracy 17.4. Thank you again for listening, and see you again soon on the Stepping Stones to Awareness show. Goodbye.